Yeah, well, let's dig in. Hello, everybody. I'm David Cooks, and I tell you what, we know that paralysis can take on many forms. It can be physical, like mine. It can
do anything you put your mind to.
And what we try to do is feature stories that go from difficult places to fulfilling purpose.
What seems impossible can be done by you.
There's going to be some things said and done on this podcast today that can impact a generation. Man, this is going to be a good one.
May knock you down, but don't let it stop you.
We have with us today someone who ended up being a drug dealer, turned his life around to now where he is serving and helping young people to not fall into the same traps that he has fallen into.
Now, we had this rule amongst us as young men that we would not get high on our own supply. And one night, a good friend of mine, who is also like a mentor to me, appeared to buy drugs from me. Very casually, I sold my mentor, my friend, drugs. And when he left, I stood there on that block and I think I probably cried. And I said, if I could sell my friend drugs after we made a pact that none of us would be on drugs, I could sell my mother drugs. And I said, I have to do something better. I have to get out of this, but I did not know what to do because that was all I knew.
Got so much to give, a lot of life to live. You must go from paralysis to purpose.
Get your pen and paper out.
Yeah,
I'm taking notes.
Paralysis to purpose.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, and let me take the time to thank you for listening to this podcast. And after you listen, please take a moment and review this podcast and share this podcast with someone else. You know, I say this every week, and I'm going to say it until I stop doing it. I love my job. I get to have conversations and meet some of the most inspiring and intriguing people in the world. And I mean, literally, the world. We've been in Nairobi, Kenya. We've been in Australia, and today we're in Trinidad. He's the CEO and founder of the Roots Foundation. He's also a prison chaplain. He helps with youth transformation and rehab. Someone told me, you need to talk to this guy. And I saw his name and I'm like, well, how do you say that? And they said, it's Mtima. Mtima Solwazi. He's going to share his story. We're going to have a conversation. And I can guarantee you this. And we haven't had a chance to talk about it yet. There's going to be some things said and done on this podcast today that can impact a generation. So get your seatbelt on and be ready. So welcome, my good friend. How are you?
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure being here. And welcome to your audience worldwide, in Kenya and all over the world. So welcome to everyone. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Well, let's get started with as a child, your family, how you were raised, where you were.
Yes. So again, thank you for having me. I am Mtima Solwazi from all the way in Trinidad and Tobago, the beautiful Twin Island in the Caribbean, sunny side. So I grew up in Belmont. That's north of the capital city, Port of Spain, right? And Belmont in itself is a very historical community. Belmont was once called Freetown. That is an area where the former slaves would have occupied. So Belmont is a very cultural place. We have a lot of persons in terms of the arts, be it our carnival, right? And you know, the world knows about our carnival. We have the pan, a lot of persons involved in pan, in dance, in music. We have so many very rich, vibrant cultural icons from Belmont. So I grew up on a hill called Layan Hill. I grew up with my mom and one younger sibling at that time. I am 4 years older than him. And we grew up with our grandparents. So yes, there would be cases where we were spoiled, because that is what Caribbean grandparents do. They spoil their grandchildren, right? So we grew up with grandfather and granny. And it was a very beautiful experience. Again, for a grandmother, a grandchild can do no wrong. So I did no wrong. But interestingly, in the 80s, something strange occurred in our community. And that was the crack cocaine epidemic. Right? And I say in the 80s, it could have been late 70s, early 80s. Now, as a child, I knew nothing about that. All I knew was grandfather would say, when those boys by the pipe, because where our house was located, it was on a corner, right? And there was a standpipe, because that is where everyone would converge to fill their water buckets or their containers to take back home, because not everyone had running water to their homes. And the block was at that corner at the standpipe. Now, back in those days, the crack block was not 24/0 as it is now. They used to actually come out from around, let's say 9, 10 a.m. and leave around 4, 5 p.m. in the afternoon, right? But during that time, grandfather would say, especially during school vacation, when you are home, he would say, when those boys by the pipe, I don't want you all in the yard playing. How could you tell young boys not to play in the yard? You know, that is any child's life, especially in the Caribbean, right? So we would stay inside and I would be peeping through the windows and seeing when they're leaving, they would come into my grandmother's yard and they would hide these matchboxes, because that's a matchbox or a cigarette box, and they would hide these boxes between the plants. Now, we did not know what was taking place by the pipe. All we knew, when those boys there, all please stop in the yard. And when they left, I would sneak outside, go to this plant area, find these boxes. Back in those days, crack cocaine, it was not foiled. Now they put it in foil paper. It was open. It looked like candy. And I never ate it, else I would not have been here today speaking. I would open this box, look at this candy, and say, oh. And I would move it and put it in another location. When they return the following day, they can't find the drugs. And they start to get all anxious and nervous because, hello, we know when the boss appears and you don't have his products, what can happen? And I will be listening to them and they arguing, hey, I put it here, you steal it, and they're arguing amongst themselves. And the boss will come, they have no drugs to produce, and he would beat them. And I would be inside laughing and saying, it's good for you, you know? And then when they leave again, I will take it and put it back where it was originally. So that was my thing, to get back at these guys for us not playing in the yard.
And thank God for your grandfather, right? Who had enough insight to keep you as protected as he could.
Yes.
At that time. And it goes back to, we always talk about family, and whatever that family looks like, for you, it was your mom and your grandparents that nurtured you and helped you. And I think that sense of community was important then, and it's important now. Even though you made some decisions that weren't great, you did have some people in your life that could help steer you down the right path.
And that is so correct. Because now what I'm speaking about, I would have been probably all 7, 8 years of age. Mm-hmm. Also, importantly, when I was younger, I was always a chubby boy. I was fat. And, you know, growing up, I can't speak for the US or North America, but growing up in the Caribbean and being fat is a challenge. You become a victim of what we now call bullying. But back in my days, that was called advantage. They would take advantage of you. And I suffered at the hands of both boys and girls. I was unable to fight back effectively to defend myself. I had one younger brother at that time, 4 years younger than me, so I could not even protect him. And I remember we got a skip, we call it a skip. So in the Caribbean, we have what you call standard 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 at primary school, which is probably elementary school on your side. And then you will sit an exam and go to secondary school. I got a skip from standard 2 to standard 4. And getting a skip from standard 2 to standard 4 placed me in a bigger class with bigger children in terms of age. I was one of the youngest. And the beatings, it increased because I'm this young child in this older classroom. When I sat my common entrance at the time, it was called common entrance, and I looked at that results in the papers, and I saw about 5 of the guys from my current primary school going on to the same secondary school. I cried because I knew that beating would continue. On the 16th of July, I turned 49. On the 16th of July, I'm 49 years of age. This incident occurred when I was around 9, 40 years ago. This guy beaten me in primary school, and I ran off towards the lone male teacher at school at that time. And the whole school is behind me running. I want you to picture this. This fat boy running from his attacker. His attacker is behind him. And a lot of school children just cheering on, yeah! And they are running behind me. And I reached the sir and I said, sir, this boy beaten me up. And David, the lone male teacher at that school, looked at me and said, a big fat boy like you making this skinny boy beat you? Boy, go from here. David, when Sir said that to me, at 9 years of age, I understood that I have to defend me. I understood that I am all alone out here. I understood that nobody have my back but me. And I left home, I left school, I went up to my grandmother's home, and I went to the bedroom and I prayed and I asked God to please make me get skinny and make me get bad, because I understood I couldn't fight back because I could not have negotiated and navigated my size effectively. And I did not see myself as a bad boy. And I know to allow that beating to end, I had to be skinny and I had to be bad. And I prayed. Imagine that. I went to God in prayer. So I listened to one of your podcasts and Thomas said, be careful what you're praying for.
What a powerful story of you looking, you're running from something, and you go to a person that you think will support you and
will protect me
and protects you, but the exact opposite happens. And then you were raised in a family that obviously had a relationship with God, the creator, and you went in and you said, well, look, help me be skinny and help me be bad, because you knew that those were the things you needed in order to combat what you had experienced. What happened after you made that prayer?
The beatings continued. Listen, it was horrible. It was horrible, right? And I really couldn't defend myself. I just couldn't, you know? And when I was in Form 3, the third form, one of my other bullies, because many fellows would just take advantage of me. Mm. And this particular guy, he had slapped me in my face, struck me in my face. And David, that was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. I was so fed up, I was so frustrated that I just turned, walked away, and the first object that I saw in my reach, I picked it up. It was a stick. And I turned back and I struck that guy in his face. Mm-hmm. When I struck him, he fell to the ground. And I said, you should dead. And I ran straight to Granny. Straight back home to my grandmother's home. And I told her what just happened. And Granny watched me very calmly and said, okay, go back to school now. I said, Granny, what? She said, if you do the crime, you have to face the time. Go back to school. And I went back to school, and the principal or the headmaster, he said to me, this is now a police matter. Go home. And I went home. What saves me from that becoming a police matter is that said young man came forward and said to his parents and my parent that he deserved what he got from me because he was a bully to me. Now I have considered being bad, and also I lost a lot of weight because I began smoking marijuana, you know, doing this stuff that some teenagers will do to assert their manhood. We attribute those type of rogue behaviors to manhood. And I think after that incident was where my life at that time, to me, went up. But in reality, it went down. Because unknowing to me, my best friend, his mother was a drug queen in Port of Spain. I did not know that before because he did not live with his mother in the community we live. We moved to Maloney. Maloney is in East Trinidad. He lived with his godmother. So I didn't know that. I did not know his mother's background. And she sent for me. She said, I want to see you. And when I went to her, she said who she was. And she said, I want you as my son because you're bad. You have more belly than my son. And whilst there, I saw these little rocks again. I remembered seeing from when I was small. But David, I did not know what that was. They had a small concession store at their home. They were selling snacks, juices, and these little rocks. But that was a big seller. And I asked my friend, I said, what is that? He said, rocks. I said, what is rocks? He said, balls. I said, what is balls? He said, crack. But I still don't know what is that. And then he said, cocaine. And I told my friend, I want to sell that. Because at that time, David, in my life, my stepfather, he got retrenched. I never knew what the word retrench meant. All I heard, Daddy got retrenched. And he was just home and he never went back to work. Right? My mother also had 2 younger sons around that time. So she's now the mother of 4 boys. And we were literally plunged into a state of poverty. And I, foolishly, but very bravely, thought that that was our ticket out of poverty. And that was my introduction into that life of crack cocaine.
You actually understood the economics of what you had seen.
Yes.
They had a store,
yes.
and they were selling a number of things in the store, but the thing that sold the most was the rocks, the little candy that you thought was candy that was crack. And
Yes.
so now that, and what does the word retrenched mean?
To be laid off from your job.
Okay. And so now your stepdad is unemployed and
Yes.
you are now impoverished, something you hadn't been before. Between grandparents and everybody, everything was taken care of. You had an all-boys school, everything. And so now your world is turned upside down.
Yes.
And because you didn't have your stepdad working, you assumed that it was your responsibility, you're the oldest, to help out. And so this is what you did.
And you know, that is a real challenge probably for most African communities where, and you know, sometimes it's a burden placed on us, not intentionally. Hey, you're the eldest boy. You have to take care of your mommy. You have to take care of your younger brothers or siblings. You are the man of the house. How can a 13-year-old child be the man of the house? I was 13 years old. You know, it is impossible for a 13-year-old to assume that role. But I saw it as I said, a real ticket out of poverty, you know, and I did it. And for a moment, I enjoyed selling crack. Because selling crack had a lot of perks. You know, I was 13 years old, David. My friend, my best friend, he was 11. And his sister was 9 years old. And the 3 of us controlled one of the largest drug block in Port of Spain at that time in the 80s. And we were children, you know, and you would ask, how? I remember one time the telephone rang and I answered the phone. And this voice said, next 15 minutes. And they hung up. I was like, what type of phone call is that? So I called my friend's sister. She was 9. I said, somebody now call and say next 15 minutes. She said, hey, it's police. Clean up. And we started to hide the drugs in the house, David. We started to hide these drugs. We hid the drugs where the police would find it. Because we were children. And we know that is good hiding spots. And the police came. They knocked on the door. Bang, 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 bang. When I opened the door, there's a look that Caribbean parents give you. That you know, your cocktail is booked. And this man gave us that look. And I realized he was the officer that called. They pretend to search, and then they left. And 5 p.m. that afternoon, listeners, the police returned. Said officer, and about 4 others. And my friend, because she was also my friend, she's 9 years of age. I am 13 years of age. And there she stands with a pile of $100 notes. And she's telling me, give this one $200. Give that one $100. Give that one $300. David and your listeners, at 13 years, at 9 years, and my friend at 11 years old, we were paying off police officers. And then we want to know why there is a problem on the streets.
You said one thing before about you enjoyed selling it for a while.
Yes.
But then the pleasure ran off. I mean, what happened? What happened and that led to the next big event?
So a series of events occurred. One of them was I was exposed to a life skills development program called SERVOL. Mm-hmm. And at SERVOL, they had this adolescent development program. It's actually an attitudinal development program that takes you, the adolescent, on a journey through life. It carries you back to when you were a baby, and it takes you forward to becoming an adult. And that journey is really transformational. So that occurred. Whilst I was going through that metamorphosis, that change, I actually started to see how destructive crack cocaine was. One of the buyers who came was my stepfather's friend, or someone who my stepfather knew. And I was afraid because I'm saying, wow, I am selling this known person to our family crack. And David, I remember seeing a pregnant woman leaving our block one day. And I asked those guys, where she just came from? They said, by us. And I told them, are you crazy? Don't sell any pregnant woman. Don't sell any fathers. When I gave them the list of who not to sell, they asked me, so who to sell? And I said, I don't care, just don't sell them. We had a customer, David. He would come on a Friday and spend about $300. He started to come on a Wednesday, and then sometime twice on one day. And all we saw is that this is our best customer. We saw the bottom line, profit. He lost his wife, his son, his job, his house. David, we took that man to ruin. And I realized, oh my God, this thing is dangerous. Because yes, when I started off, in my mind, I was trying to fill a gap at home. We were in a state of poverty. But after a while, that was money to go party, to Lime, to buy brand name clothing. We were destroying lives for vanity. And one night, a good friend of mine, who is also like a mentor to me, he was about 4 years my senior, appeared to buy drugs from me. And David, very casually, I sold my mentor, my friend, drugs. And he came back, and he came back, and he came back until his money was depleted that night. And when he left, I stood there on that block. And I think I probably cried. And I said, the next person I am expecting to see is my mother. Because I am saying that to say, you don't know who on drugs until they come in front of you. I did not know my friend was on drugs until he appeared in front of me to buy drugs from me. And I sold him. And I said, if I could sell my friend drugs after we made a pact that none of us would be on drugs, I could sell my mother drugs. And that started to eat away at me. And I said, I have to do something better. I have to get out of this. But I did not know what to do because that was all I knew. I am 21 years of age. I've been selling drugs since I was 13 years. That was my life. So I did what my grandmother taught me from small. Boy, I started to pray. Watch me. I started to pray and pray and pray. I started to seclude myself in my bedroom. And I would stay in my room and pray and ask God for a way out, but I did not have a plan. I did not know how to come out.
This is a great place. We'll take a quick break because this is almost like a breaking point for you, where you are at that point of you start to realize that you were ruining lives with what you were doing, and you wanted a way out, but you didn't have a plan out.
No.
So when we
didn't have a plan.
When we come back, we're going to pick it up from here with Mtima and see what he did next, because the second half of his story is much greater than the first half. We will be right back after this quick break.
Here's a chance to win a signed copy of David's inspiring book, detailing his personal journey, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose. Each month, there will be 2 giveaways. Just leave us a review of today's podcast on the platform you're listening from. It's that easy.
And welcome back to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. And we're going to pick up with our guest, Mtima, right where he left off. He was at a point of how to get out of the drug dealing business. So go ahead and pick it up right from where you are.
I think I made up this prayer, not knowing that God was actually directly in charge of that process. So the prayer I made up was, dear creator of the heavens and the earth and all between, guide me on the straight path. Wherever that straight path is, guide me on it. I said that prayer constantly on a daily basis. Morning, Granny would tell me, get up before the sun rise on you. She would say that's the best time to pray, before the sun rise. So try and catch it, and I would try to catch that. Get up, pray, then go back and sleep. Right? I'll pray after the sun set. So I'm praying like twice a day. I repeated this prayer. And while in Togo, I had another friend, right? He was also a gangster. But he was a kind of different gangster. He was very educated also. And he would tell me about meditation. He said, you need to meditate. You need to just release yourself from the world and go into a trance. And he was on a high, different level of meditation. Mm-hmm. So I would go down to this beach every morning and sit on a rock and meditate. And one day, I don't know what I saw, but it was as though flashbacks or scenes from my life going back to a child. And I just jumped off the rock and I said, I am leaving Togo and going back to Port of Spain. All right? I started to practice Islam. Right? I didn't know really and truly that I was a Muslim, but I just went to a brother on the hill by us. I told him, I want to be a Muslim, My name, Mtima Solwazi, that was given to me whilst at SERVOL on a field trip. I told the lady I don't like my current name. or my former name, which was Garth Edwards. And when I gave her my qualities, she picked Mtima Solwazi. Mtima means heart, Solwazi means knowledge. Now, mind you, SERVOL was that seed that was planted. The tree that started to grow was Islam. I went back to school, right? And then also, I got employed at SERVOL. Now, being employed at SERVOL was a big step for me because up to today, I have credited SERVOL with literally saving my life. SERVOL gave me purpose. In the same program that changed my life, the Adolescent Development Program, and I worked SERVOL for 15 years. While at SERVOL, I heard that you can be enrolled in university as an adult student. And David, I took that opportunity. And I did my certificate course in social work because I have that in me. From my certificate in social work, I went over to main campus at the University of the West Indies, and I did my undergrad in psychology, major, and I minored in sociology and criminology. Now, at UW doing my undergrad, oh my goodness, it was difficult. Remember, I did not have the academic qualifications. I did not do A-levels, so I did not have that bridge, that academic bridge into university. So everything at the university level was new to me. But I struggled. I made a lot of C's. And then I went to declare my course. And I told the CSR I wanted to do a double major. And she laughed. She said, "You don't have the GPA to qualify you to do a double major." When I looked at the courses I already took, I said, well, I'll do my major in psychology and I'll minor in sociology and criminology. Dear audience, from age 13 to age 21, I sold crack cocaine on the streets. I was involved in gang culture. I understand the life on the streets. When I did criminology, my lowest grade was A. I made a lot of A pluses. I aced the criminology course. Fortunately for me, but unfortunately for life, I was the only student who ever was arrested, who knew about police and law, who knew about crime. That was my baby. So one of the reasons why I started to work at the prisons is because when I was 16 years of age, I was arrested and sent to the adult prison where I should not have been sent to. I was a juvenile, but my case was an indictable charge, right? And they sent me to the adult prison. I got bail, and then the case went to the High Court 1 year after, at age 17. And I spent about 10 days in the adult prison at Port of Spain and at Golden Grove. And whilst at Port of Spain, I was in a cell with a notorious, well, he was labeled Trinidad most wanted at that time, right? And I was very observant. And I looked at what the environment I was in, right? We were transferred to the Golden Grove prison. And I was in a cell with 5 other guys, all charged for murder. And my charge wasn't murder. And I said to myself, this is the problem. We are taking young boys and mixing them with hardcore criminals and want to know why we have a problem on the streets. So from ever since at age 17, in my mind, I wanted to make a difference with that prison system. So when I got the opportunity in 2004, I actually dedicated my life to go into the prisons to help these young boys not transition over to adult prison.
When did you first know that poetry and the spoken word, that was a gift that you had?
Twofold. Now, when I started to write poems at age 16, I started to write it for my then girlfriend. And I write all these nice love poems. And her friends would come over. They would read the poems and I would say, aha, I have something there, boy. I have lyrics to catch girls, because at 16, that's all your interest is. It was a whole love scene. But I realized that I don't think I should be writing about love. I have nothing against love, but I should not be writing about love when my friends are dying on the streets. But our poetry, the purpose of our poetry is transformative.
Yeah.
You know?
And the ability to speak on so many issues.
Yes.
And you started off the podcast talking about how important the arts are in Trinidad.
Yes.
And whether it's dance and so this is one of the things that was naturally a part of your culture that you were able to take now and use it to reach people and to change young people, and you still do it now. On Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, we talk about the journey from paralysis to purpose. And for some people, well, most people that we've talked to, whether they identify it a certain way or not, faith seems to be a part of their journey. And you talked about it. You talked about it quickly, and about converting to Islam and practicing Islam. What role did that give you in terms of you'd come from a praying background and a family of faith, and now you are practicing Islam? What were the couple of things within that began to impact you the most that you begin to use as you reach kids with your poetry and some of the other things that you've done?
So now, it's so interesting that in Trinidad at present, we have two major gangs on the streets. They call themselves Rasta City and Muslim. It is not based on ideology, right? So in Trinidad, when like someone like my background becomes a Muslim, someone might think, oh my God, he has moved from bad to worst, right? Because, and you said it clearly, because I came from a background of prayer and faith, I think practicing Islam was an easy fit for me, because just before this interview, anticipating that the length it might maybe, I went to pray before, right? So I wouldn't have that to worry about, that, hey, my prayer time is upon me. So as a Muslim, you pray 5 times a day, right? But I already have this culture of praying. And because this 5 times a day is structured, it started to give me more purpose. My grandmother, who was not a Muslim, embraced me embracing Islam. And she would wake me. It's 5 o'clock, it's time to pray. You know, she would look for this moon. I saw the moon this evening, Ramadan starting tomorrow. I said, Granny, how you see the moon? I was looking for it. You know, she was so involved in that transformation, because she would say to me, hey, I don't know nothing about Islam, but she supported me because she realized Islam made me calm.
How did you know when you went to university that social work and those areas of giving back were what you really wanted to do and what you were purposed to do?
So with social work, when I got the opportunity to go to open campus, that's the adult learning, I wanted to give back to society, right? So I started to ask persons, what are these courses that allows you to give back? And somebody said social work. No, I did not know what was social work, right? So I said, well, yeah, it's something okay, right? And I did a little research and realized that it's a profession that involves, not just caring for persons, but helping them through situations. So I said, right, I will do social work. Why I chose psychology, a bit jokey. Now, my first interest was sociology, because some years ago, I met this Dr. Nasser Mustafa, and he gave a lecture about youth in crime and stuff like that. And I'm in the audience and I'm saying, he's Indian. I'm saying, how does this Indian man know about my life? Because when he's speaking, I could relate to it directly. So I asked someone, I said, who's that guy? They said, Dr. Nasser. Tell me, I'm a medical doctor? They said, no, doctor in sociology. And I said, what is sociology? And I am not ashamed to say, as an adult, I did not know what was sociology. I said, what is sociology? And they explained to me, and I said, I want to do sociology, right? But when I applied to UE, I was given misinformation from some students, and they told me they don't offer sociology for evening students. So I said, I will do psychology, because I also seriously wanted to understand why, or what is the reason behind the state of the black man. I am not making any apology for this, right? I'm not making any apology. When I started to go back to school before UE, I did evening classes and I did history, because I said something is wrong. Because in the Caribbean, they taught us that our history as black people began on the plantation. And when you have that as your foundation, David, you in for trouble. Your history, boss, could never begin on a plantation. A lot happened before that plantation life. So I wanted to understand what is our mindset? Why do we feel we have to kill each other? Why do we hate each other? You at a different level, David, in your life. I am at a different level in my life. And we are two strangers exchanging love.
Your lived experiences were perfect for what you decided to go and study.
Yes, interestingly, yes.
You were able to take what was a lived experience and not a very positive one, but turn it into positivity to serve other people.
David, for a man who don't have an academic foundation, to have a master's in sociology, I'm telling you, that is not no underachievement. Because you say correctly, what would I have used? It could not have been an academic background. I actually used, David, a lot of my exams, when I wrote my exams, it was based on real stories. I just used the theories to give it somebody, but it was actually based on real stories.
So on Paralysis to Purpose, on that road, on that journey, there are three things that I really think are important and that we try to talk about, and you've mentioned them.
Yes.
I want to go through each one of these and just give me a brief
Yes.
first thing you think about when you hear them. The first pillar is perspective.
So in terms of perspective, I will add purpose to it because I wanted something better in my life. I did not know what it was. I did not know what better looked like, right? But I think I used the perspective of prayer, right? Prayer with a purpose though, right? To achieve that, because that when I hear perspective, I probably, at least for me, that's how I interpret it. That because I wanted something different, but I did not know what different looked like and how to achieve different. So I used the perspective that was in my worldview, prayer.
And prayer does give you a different perspective.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden another
Change
world,
my world. Yeah, change my
world is opened up to you. The second word is perseverance.
Well, David, the whole story is perseverance. from being bullied, from in my grandfather's yard with those guys selling the drugs, to being bullied, to struggling at my, and that is one thing I pride myself with, that I don't give up.
There you go.
David, it can be how hard. I will pause, right? My master's was a 2-year program. I completed it in 5 years. It was very difficult.
But you never stopped.
Huh? No, I said, have to complete it. I have to finish it.
Wow.
And I think I practice perseverance. I believe.
Absolutely. Oh, yes, you have. Because
my whole life is perseverance.
Yeah, there were times when you wanted to kill yourself and all that kind of stuff, and you did not. You kept going. So perseverance. But the last one is partnerships.
Right. So I am a big believer in partnership because one, sometimes we feel it's about us, it's not about us. Yes, this is your podcast, but I was referred to you by someone. That is partnership. Foundation. We always extend ourselves, sometimes to our detriment, because some people do not respect partnership and believe that partnership means they should be in front. Partnership is just what I'm seeing on the screen. David side by side with me. That is partnership.
Before we go, if there was one thing that you would love to leave our audience with, what would that be?
I will leave the audience with the quote I heard only today. Stumbling is not about falling. It is about moving forward quickly.
And I tell you what, that covers perspective, that covers perseverance, that covers partnership. I mean, that really does. And it gets you the purpose. It gets you the purpose because ultimately you talked about it. You figured out this was your purpose. And from your pain and from your struggle, you were able to identify purpose and you're no longer paralyzed.
But and David, your podcast, your book is so powerful, right? Because I was in a state of paralysis. I said to you, I felt to my lowest when I realized that this drugs was so destructive, right? So I retreated to my room, secluding myself in my room was a form of paralysis that led to this purpose.
Wow.
right?
Yeah, that's right. That's great. So, look, I'm sure we'll talk again.
Yes.
Because there's so much more to this story than we have time to talk about today.
Yes.
But if people are interested in supporting your organization or following you, what's the best way for them to follow you or get a hold of you?
The easiest way is to Google Roots Foundation TT.
Okay.
Roots, ROOTS, Foundation TT. Right? And we would love to hear from persons just to drop a word to say hi, or to give advice, or right now we're in the process of establishing an academy, right, called Roots Cafe, Creative Academy for Edutainment, where we actually going to have a full-fledged or full-scale school. So we could actually track the progress of our youth. They could come into this space and they could be further developed and become somebody that they want to become.
It was great to speak with you. We got a chance to talk about the definition of your name. That's heart knowledge. And that was important and just a fantastic story. Well, hey, again, man, thank you, Mtima, for coming.
Yes.
I guess on our podcast. And until the next episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, I'm David Cooks, reminding you that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure.
You can do anything you put your mind to.
Thanks for tuning in to Paralysis to Purpose. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paralysis to Purpose on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. To purchase his book, visit davidcookspeaks.com. Be sure to tune in next time for more inspiring conversations with David Cooks.
My doctor had offered a blood test to find out gender pretty early on because it was kind of a new upcoming thing. And I'm a planner. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. I want to do the blood test. And so when I got the call about what I thought was just going to be a gender reveal and start planning some little gender parties, her voice was definitely more serious. And she let me know that I was indeed having my lady baby. However, she tested positive for trisomy 18.
Next time on Paralysis to Purpose, David welcomes Trisha Roos.
At the time I heard that, I said, well, how do we fix that? I'm sure that's fine, right? And I was at a work conference when I received this call a long way away from home. And she said, no, Trisha, this is fatal. Typically a fatal condition. You need to get home as fast as possible.
Paralysis to purpose.